Today we're cracking the code on one of the biggest challenges we face. How do we keep our food supply secure when our climate is becoming so, well, unpredictable? The pressure is definitely on, but plant breeders have a seriously powerful tool they're using to get ahead of the curve.
And really, it all boils down to this single question. This isn't just about growing more food anymore. It's about growing smarter food. Crops that can handle whatever this wild future decides to throw at them. The stakes, they honestly could not be higher. And the key to the whole thing? It comes down to two words: genetic gain. For a plant breeder, this is everything. It's the ultimate measure of how fast and how well they can improve our crops, generation after generation.
So what is genetic gain, really? Well, think of it less like some abstract idea and more like a precise recipe for success. And it's all guided by a surprisingly simple equation.
And here it is, the breeder's equation. Now I know, it looks a little academic, but trust me, every single part of this formula is a lever that scientists can pull to create better, stronger, and more resilient plants. So let's break down what each of those levers actually does.
All right, let's dive into this recipe for success, one ingredient at a time, and see how breeders actually use this equation out in the real world.
First up, selection intensity. And this is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's all about being incredibly picky. You don't just pick the pretty good plants to be the parents for the next generation. No, you choose only the absolute best of the best, the top 1%, to pass on their amazing traits.
Next, we've got heritability. This one gets right to the core of genetics. So a plant might look amazing, right? But was that because of its great genes, or did it just get super lucky with perfect soil and just the right amount of rain? Heritability helps us figure out how much of that success is actually written in its DNA and can be passed on.
Then there's genetic variation. The best way to think about this is like a breeder's pantry. It's all the ingredients they have to work with. The more diverse genes you have for things like heat tolerance or deep roots or fighting off diseases, the more creative and amazing your final crop can be.
And finally, on the bottom of the equation, we have time. And honestly, this is the big bottleneck. It's the total number of years it takes to go through one single breeding cycle. So if you want to speed up genetic gain, you have to find a way to shrink this number. You got to make time move faster.
Okay, so here's the problem. Climate change is throwing a massive wrench in the works. It's creating what scientists call environmental noise. More droughts, unexpected heat waves, sudden floods, all this randomness makes it super hard to tell if a plant is doing well because of its genes or just because the weather happened to be good that season. It makes it really, really hard to measure heritability accurately.
But this is where modern science fights back. Let's look at two incredible innovations that are totally changing the game. They're letting breeders supercharge that genetic gain equation like never before.
The first innovation is a cool-sounding one: Envirotyping. Instead of just guessing what the environment did, breeders now use a whole arsenal of tech. We're talking drones, soil sensors, satellite data, to measure the exact conditions every single plant experienced. It just cuts right through all that environmental noise.
And by knowing exactly what those environmental effects were, scientists can finally filter out all that noise and see a plant's true genetic signal. This gives the heritability part of our equation a massive boost. It makes sure breeders are picking plants that are truly genetically superior, not just ones that got lucky.
But that still leaves that other huge problem, right? Time. Traditionally, one full breeding cycle could take 10 to 15 years. And when you're facing a rapid climate change, that's a luxury we just don't have. We have to speed things up.
So enter our second game changer: speed breeding. This is basically a way to put plants on fast forward. By using these controlled environments with optimized 24-hour lighting, breeders can kind of trick plants into growing and making seeds way faster. We're talking up to 6 generations in a single year. It's wild.
And what does that do? It directly attacks the time variable in our equation. By slashing the time it takes for each cycle, speed breeding just dramatically accelerates the overall rate of genetic gain.
So, what happens when you combine these two powerful tools? Well, you don't just get a little improvement. You get a completely revolutionary new cycle for creating the crops we need for our future.
Yeah, it creates this incredible self-reinforcing loop. Envirotyping gives us way better data, so we can make smarter choices. Then, speed breeding rapidly creates new varieties based on those choices. And guess what? Those new varieties get tested, generating even more data, making the next cycle even faster and more precise than the last.
And this quote just sums up the urgency perfectly. We are in a race against time. These new technologies, they aren't just about being efficient. They're about making sure our efforts are aimed squarely at the real-world problems that farmers are facing right now.
Well, it means we finally have the tools to be more precise, more predictive, and much, much faster in creating the crops that are going to feed our planet. The code for climate resilience isn't just being cracked anymore, it's being completely rewritten at an incredible pace. So the question is no longer if we can do it, but how quickly we can get these solutions scaled up around the globe.